Piers here on a wet, blustery, windy morning on a beach in southwest of England on my way back from Cornwall. I'm going to make a longer video. I'm going to do a short version as well. I'm trying to assimilate my thoughts from the last few days and generally. And these are things I've talked about before, but I want to bring them together. So one is really about how we change our system, how we change our system in terms of how we measure the cost of production of goods and services. We factor in all the public costs, not just the private costs. Then our system works, where it works better at least. The other one is about having a plan for the country and about how long we give ourselves or give the people in power to implement these plans and how far out we should be looking. Because if we don't change our approach, then nothing is going to change. So if you haven't moved yet, move to Moblox, especially Moblox Mobile. If you want to watch the longer version, then have a look on LinkedIn or YouTube. So the longer version is that in 1993, I think it was, showing my age now, I wrote a thesis on the social contract. I read it the philosophers, Hobbes, Rousseau, Locke. I did courses in social accounting, financial accounting, economics and law. I won a prize for that actually. So I did an accounting and law degree and this fascinated me. And I wrote this thing in 1993, yeah, and I could have written it yesterday. Nothing's changed. And my line of attack in that thesis was that companies, it's a social contract, so they exist at the behest of society. We allow them to exist to bring together the units of production so that they create goods and services for society as a whole, and they create wealth, they create jobs, they do good. Now obviously initially the wealthy, the landowners, the mill owners, the East India Company, even the Crown, if you go back a bit further, was financing pirates. But the idea was that in those days, the only real stakeholders they cared about were the owners, the rich, the landowners. Over time, even some of the mill owners, I grew up in the northwest of England, they realised if they look after their workers, give them good housing, clean water, a better standard of living, that they made more money essentially. And some people did do that. But obviously stakeholders have widened from your shareholders to your employees to your customers to your supply chain to the local environment to the global environment to impact in terms of your carbon output. And what we need to do is measure and factor all the public costs into the production of that good and service, as well as the stuff you just pay for with pound, shilling and pence. So we have an accounting system based on money, finance. It needs to factor in, it is to some extent one way over time, but it needs to be more structured. The social costs, so social accounting, and you mesh the two together, and your P&L essentially reflects the true costs to the planet essentially of that good or service. When you're paying for it, and that probably is going to be in folding stuff, that you are paying the true cost. Now, that means a huge change to our accounting system. And if we don't all do it at once, it's very difficult because companies taking on these new costs are going to be at a disadvantage when they come to competing for capital because they'll be making less money, depending how you measure that. So that needs to change. And, capitalism is a system we have. Even China, as I said, has a capitalist system, and it can be made to work better. The other point is about having a plan for the country. We don't have one. We need a longer term plan. We've got this independent nation now. We probably need to have a real think about Brexit and pull our head out of the sand. We are where you are. I was no fan of it. I think it was economic self-harm. I think it's inevitable we end up back in the single market. That deals with the Northern Ireland Protocol as well, and the movement of labour. There are more vacancies in the UK than there are people actually available for work, and that just doesn't work, does it? It's pretty obvious, and there's no point ignoring it. So we need to have a plan for the country, for the education system. Education hasn't caught up since they were teaching the 3 R's in the mills with a linear progression over time. If it turns into exponential change, then a lot of people are going to be left behind, and education is never going to catch up. It's impossible for it to do so. So that needs a complete rethink as well. And the last point is that not only do we need a plan for the Britain, which is one that needs to come from us, from the people that represent us, we need to think about how long our politicians and our civil servants, our local authorities, or even we individually, give ourselves to put these things into being, because it can take 10 years, a decade, even 20 years, like a Marshall Plan. You can't try and change something or so you can point at something and say, oh, I did that, so you can win an election. It doesn't work. Infrastructure, education, creating a platform or a global hub for enterprise, innovation, entrepreneurs is something that takes time, and we don't give ourselves enough time because we're too partisan and we're too worried about the next election and our jobs, and that needs to change as well. So if you haven't yet, move to Moblox.